guys, in today's video, we're covering a hotly debated topic in the Raid community. Leave your ego at the door because we ain't sparing nobody's feelings on this one. Today, we're going to answer once and for all, who is the best starter? Welcome to the channel, guys. Thank you for being here. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm Vamp, and let's get into this topic today because we're going to talk about a pressure point for a lot of Raid players, and that's if you don't pick their favorite starter, they get all types of hung up, all right? So we're going to go over the starters today, and we're going to talk about why I think there's only two contestants for the best one, and personally, I think I actually go against the consensus in who I would consider the best starter. Let's get into it. All right, guys, I had some fledgling humans who are under my care that got all types of sideways and sick last night. This recording session almost got thwarted, but I'm here, hairs up, attitudes right, making the best of a very narrow window I have to record some content. So let's talk about the starter champions. Now, in the tutorial, the starter champions are displayed as follows: Elhain, Kael, Gallic, and Ethel. Now, some people call her Aethel. I actually need to watch that episode of The Call of the Arbiter to see what Raid chose to call them in the TV show. I never got to that one, and I do want to watch it. But for now, I'm going to call her Ethel because that's going to feel natural to me because that's what I've always called her. At the end of the day, guys, in a fantasy game, call them what the hell you want. So if we're looking at the starter champions, it's a simple answer, y'all. Like, everybody's arguing about this, and they don't need to be. It's kind of like smoke and mirrors, all right? Here's the answer. I'm about to give it to you right now. Yeah? Okay. Pick the one you like. You'll be fine. No, but seriously, guys, you will be able to survive in the game no matter who you pick. With that out of the way, and having acknowledged the fact that you should absolutely pick who you want to, let's talk about, from experience, what these champions bring to the table and what their strengths and weaknesses are. So let's start with Elhain. Elhain does some pretty good damage, okay? I'm gonna go over these kits briefly. I don't think as rare champions without a lot of interesting or complicated mechanics that they need a whole lot of attention. We're just gonna talk about the fact that Elhain is an AoE nuker. That is her forte. That's what she shines at. She does absolutely nothing useful other than just attack on her A1, nothing above that. Her A2 is effectively an AoE. The way that it computes in the game is slightly different than a true AoE, but she's going to hit all enemies, okay? And she does pretty good damage for a rare champion on this skill. In my opinion, this extra 15% chance to crit makes no sense, and adding a crit rate buff makes no sense. I do believe that that came from the very beginning stages of the game before people started to learn, as silly as this might seem now, that you should put your damage dealers in 100% crit rate, period, as soon as you can, then start building crit damage and their attack stat. It doesn't make sense to build a nuker with less than 100% crit rate unless they have this extra 15% or this buff on all skills. And to be fair, the buff is still dicey because that can be stolen or blocked or lost through petrification. So this is just a damage dealing skill, and it's decent for that, but all this extra shenanigans is kind of useless. Double hit AoE on her A3. That's it. She doesn't do anything against bosses. She doesn't have any kind of turn meter manipulation or any mechanics. She doesn't have any debuffs at all. She just does damage, okay? So she's going to be fantastic in Arena. I think she's the best starter for Arena. And Arena's important, but she's going to bring nothing to you against bosses and nothing for you at all except some raw damage in Clan Boss. So for that reason, not my favorite. The next one in the line is Kael. He is a Dark Elf, and if we go over his kit briefly, he's already better, a lot better, and he tends to be the best starter based on consensus among the Raid community. He has small version of the poison debuff when booked at 100% chance for 2 turns on his A1. That's big, mostly against bosses, but it will help you very, very, very early in the game against certain tanky campaign mobs. Then he has his AoE hit, which also has the useless extra 15% chance to crit, but he fills his turn meter by 25% for every enemy killed. That's really nice. Then on his A3, he has hits at random, which is not particularly useful against waves, but basically turns into a 4-hitter skill against a single boss. And he puts poisons at a 50% clip on each hit, which means he has the chance to land 4. Okay, now he's probably not going to because he has 50% per hit. But if you're putting all 4 hits on the boss, you're gonna get some poison on him. And that's the bigger poison debuff at 5% for 2 turns. This skill makes him better at the very beginning than any other champion in the game, potentially, in Clan Boss. But I have a quarrel with this, and we'll get into that when we get into the champion that I would probably recommend as my personal favorite starter. However, Kael is incredibly good and has a very good kit and does bring poison on 2 skills, which adds that layer that Elhain does not have against bosses. The next one up is going to be Gallic. He is an orc and he is useless. Gallic is useless. I actually tried to stand up for my boy Gallic back in the day when I was dumber, younger, dumber, and just younger and dumber. to be quite frank. But that partly came from the beginning of the game when I played was very different because the whole landscape of the game looked different. Okay, so I'll cut myself some slack on that one. Looking at him now as objectively as I can, oh my lord, he's about useless. Like, I just don't understand why he's so much weaker than the other starters. If you love orcs, going back to the note I made at the beginning, pick him, you'll be fine. Okay, but we'll talk about what he does. Absolutely nothing. Decent that it's a 2-hitter, guaranteed, for Fire Knight, I guess. But nothing on the A1. 2-hitter. Attacks all enemies is good, but all the starters have an AoE skill. Extra 15% chance of inflicting a crit. Again, we don't care. Places increased speed is nice. It is. But just on him is going to make it where he potentially outruns your support at the beginning of the game. And because he doesn't have like a ton of synergy, like 2 AoEs or something that gives him an extra turn, it's there. It's the big version of increased speed, but I don't really know that it's going to make a huge noticeable difference versus if he just did the hit and didn't buff himself. If it were increased attack or something like that, or even increased defense to help him survive, I feel like that would be better. But it's there. It's a good buff. It's just meh on him. Then this skill attacks 4 times at random. You might go, oh, like Kyle. Yeah, but here's the thing. This one doesn't do poison or anything like that. And it has a maximum, after fully being booked, of a 40% chance to place little decreased defense for 2 turns. It's just not that good. Now, if the target has more than 2 debuffs, he can place the big decreased defense, but it's still at a 40% clip. It's worse than Kyle's chance to drop poisons, and it's not nearly as useful as poisons because in my experience playing the game, you would not rely on someone like Gallic for any amount of time to do decreased defense when there's people that are farmable like War Maiden, who you can farm copies of her from campaign. You could, if you really grind it out, get a copy of her and then get all the copies you need to put into her as skill books, because if you didn't know that, you can use duplicates of any champion, but you should only do this with rares, trust me, rares and below. You can use duplicates of a champion as skill tomes. So you could farm however many War Maidens it takes for all her skills to be maxed, and guess what she's gonna do? 100% chance to land decreased defense. So is it 100? Yes, when you book her, it's 100% chance. Just wanted to make sure that I hadn't, remembered her too fondly because it's been quite a minute since I was at the beginning of the game and farming for copies of her. But yes, look at this. If you book it out, 4 skill books or 4 dupes right here, it goes from 75 to 100% chance for 60% decreased defense. So like, if you really need the decreased defense, you're going to try to go for someone like her, who's like a supportive debuffer or a hybrid damage dealer debuffer, before you worry about a stupid 40% chance on a hits at random skill. It's just not it. So going back to the starters, Gallic is at the bottom of the list. If we then go to the last starter, which is Athel, this is the case I'm going to make for why Athel is the best starter champion in the game. I think it's very close between her and Kyle, and I genuinely don't think I'd be able to argue with a straight face with someone who picks Kyle, but I am a person who got Frozen Banshee, which is another rare. Obviously, you would have to pull her. She's not available as a starting champion in my clan boss early on in the game, and Kyle then became a little bit of a problem because once you start getting debuffers in clan boss, which at the beginning, damage debuffs like HP burn and poison are very, 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 very good at scaling your damage up in clan boss, because you can just kind of mostly concern yourself with helping your champions survive and let the debuffs do more damage than the champions can just do outright by hitting the clan boss, okay? And those debuffs are debuffs that tick damage on a boss based on a percentage of that boss's max HP. So they don't care as much about what your champion's stats are except accuracy. The other stats do not matter. The HP burn and the poison are going to do the damage they do once they land, regardless of if a very weakly built champion or a huge smacking nuker champion casts the debuffs. It doesn't matter, okay? So here's why I think Athel is better. You don't have to worry about the fact that Kyle has a 100% chance to place these little poisons and crowd the debuff bar. Now, the debuff bar on the Demon Lord clan boss, which is the first clan boss you're going to be fighting as you progress through the game at the very beginning, has a maximum debuff count on his bar of 10. Okay, so if Kyle goes a couple times and he throws up the little poisons, you could be at, 4 or 5 debuffs just from Kyle and only have 5 more to do. Then if you think about, okay, we're probably trying to get decreased defense up there. That's another one. So now you have 4 left. Weaken would be great. So now you only have 3 left. And then if you have any other poisoners, you run into an issue where Kyle's small poisons are actually keeping you from putting other more valuable debuffs on the clan boss, and therefore he's actually making your run worse. by having that A1. That's interesting because it would have been phenomenal if by any chance he could have had the big version of poison on his A1, but it just would have been too broken, and it would have been a lot stronger and disproportionate in things like campaign to potentially drop 2 turns of big poison on a boss in early campaign or even a tanky mob. So anyway, the reason that I like Ethel better, right, finally getting to it, is because she has a 3-hitter on her A1. That's phenomenal for clan boss. This is her default skill, and any champion that has 3 or more hits on their default skill will get a different kind of mastery to do damage than a champion that does 2 or 1 hit on their default skill. The reason that matters is because over the course of what will eventually become a long clan boss fight, right, because you're going to be weak at the beginning and you're going to have to level up and you're going to have to figure things out, but your goal is to survive against the Demon Lord clan boss as long as you can. That means that she's going to get more A1s and get in more hits by a huge margin than a champion who does 1 or even 2 hits. Okay, so when you take that different mastery called Giant Slayer for 3 hitters and above, you're going to get more damage from that mastery over the course of the battle than someone like Kael that has the other mastery called War Master in the same amount of turns against the clan boss. Okay, so she's just outright better based on that. Secondly, this is the big version of Weaken, and she has 100% chance to place it. I do not understand why this doesn't get talked about more. This is huge because I remember that when you're at the beginning of the game and you are not, throwing money at the game right out of the gate, it's very difficult to find consistent Weaken or to find it on a person who makes sense to put in your clan boss team. To have it on an A1 means that she has 3 chances to place it. Each hit has a 100% chance to place. This shit's going to be up all the time if she has enough accuracy. She's going to struggle a little bit against force because she has a chance to weak hit force, but having 3 hits all weak hit is unlikely, right? And each hit has a 100% chance once this skill is booked to place Weaken. That makes your entire team do 25% more damage to the clan boss. I'm not even going to go into that math. The other champions don't have that. Galak has a bad chance at decreased defense, and you can get that from so many champions. If you use my link, which is in the description box below, you can get Ugo, who does decreased defense and block buffs, and that decreased defense paired with Ethel's Weaken will put the boss under the maximum amount of amplified damage and mitigated defense so that your team can do more damage to the clan boss, okay? It's just not even going to be comparable to a team that doesn't have the Weaken, especially at the beginning, because you're trying to eke out every last bit of damage you can, okay? So this is huge. There is another part of her kit that is not nearly as good in my opinion, but is a very valid reason why I think she might be the best starter champion. And regardless of whether we can actually determine whether someone is objectively the best starter, my personal preference would be to start with her. If I could go back, I think I would start with her. And if I could go back right now, which I did, and there's a series on that where I talked through the beginning of the game by actually playing through it, I did pick Ethel, right? Because the landscape of the game is different now. So even way back in the day, it's possible, knowing what I know now, I would have picked Ethel. But with the game how it is now, I'm definitely picking Ethel. There's too many options for poison champions. You could even redeem a poison champion if you're a brand new account with the code for Taragi, free frog, and then he actually has a chance to place poison debuffs on the clan boss just when the clan boss hits him, right? It's like a passive thing, but you can figure that out if you're interested in him. Put it down in the comments below and I'll try to cover him and or other free codes for champions that players may be trying to get in their first 24 hours with a promo code. Okay, just let me know in the comments and I'll potentially try to cover that if that's of interest. But moving on, she has a plenty strong enough AoE. All the starters have an AoE, has that bullshit extra 15% that we don't care about, but this skill hits pretty hard. This is the cool part of her kit that I don't think is as good as her A1. I don't think it surges her value as much as her A1, but this is very unique and it's unlike any of the other starters, okay? Her third skill that books to a 4-turn cooldown, it starts at 5, you put 1 skill book in it or 1 dupe of her, and now she's at a 4-turn cooldown, places 25% increased attack, so she will just do 25% more based on her attack multiplier on this champion for 2 turns, or places 30% increased defense for 2 turns if their current HP is less than 50%, and gains an extra turn. Now, I believe this has to be ascended. You can't tell because we're in the champion index and she's shown as level 60, 6-star with a full blessing, but I believe you have to ascend her to 3 stars to unlock this part about the extra turn, possibly also the part about the increased defense. But basically what I'm getting at is that this is an extra turn ability, which basically brings a 4-turn down to a 3-turn cooldown and allows her to buff herself and then go. Instead of buffing herself, everybody cycles 3 turns, she potentially gets debuffed or killed, and then, oh, she didn't even get to use the buff because now she's down, or now she's debuffed, or now she's stunned, or who knows what. But she gets to place the buff and then go again. And while there is a bigger increased attack buff at 50%, and this is only the 25 because she's a rare champion, this gives you something that none of the other starters do: an increased attack buff for free with no one else on the team doing it. Okay, so at the beginning of the game, depending on who you're lucky enough to pull, you may have a hard time getting someone in your arena team or even in your wave clear dungeon teams that has increased attack. Probably not for too long, but at the beginning it's very possible. Someone like Apothecary, who's another rare that's a speed booster and a healer, is a very good option in arena, very good option in early dungeons, and he doesn't have any kind of increased attack buff like that. So when you get farther in the game, this is not going to matter as much, especially not at 25%, but at the beginning this is huge because it opens up the door for team comps for you that do not include an extra champion to add increased attack. That's really what it is. And then the added bonus is that if she gets low, she puts a little bit of increased defense on herself. That's going to be very helpful at the beginning of the game. And then the fact that this is on an extra turn means that she gets to immediately nuke if that nuke is off cooldown, or immediately triple hit with her A1 that places weaken while buff with 25% increased attack. Very good champion. All the starters have the same 15% HP in all battles aura. You'll use that at the beginning. Not a very good aura, but they obviously are rare champions, so they're not going to have crazy stats. You still have epic, legendary, and mythical above them, so these auras are not expected to be crazy. But basically that's my thoughts, guys. I don't think it requires too much deeper of a dive than that. My vote is for Ethel. Definitely let me know, guys, if you agree or what your thoughts are or what your hot take is on maybe one of either Elhain or Gallic actually being the best starter. Anything you got to comment on this, drop it in the comments below. This is a conversation I would actually be somewhat interested to have if people actually have kind of some insight or some experience that's different than mine, because at the end of the day, guys, I'm just going to kind of let y'all know if it's a personal opinion or seemingly more of an objective fact in Raid. But a lot of the times, guys, it's going to be my experience. It's going to be my opinion, and I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, don't focus so much on comparison to other people or what other people say is an absolute must or an absolute no-no, and just play the game the way you want, and then look back at how you've progressed and learn from your own play. You don't have to go to, you know, a tier list for every single thing in the game. If that's what you want to do, go for it. Maybe that's how it's fun for you, is to go to a tier list and absolutely hyper analyze and min-max every single thing. Good for you. Play the game the way you want to. But at the end of the day, if you're the kind of person like me who likes to experiment some and likes to question the consensus some, and maybe even likes to see like, well, let's see if I can make that underdog champion actually do something. Usually I can't. But, you know, hey, that's also a valid way to play the game. So you do you, boo, and enjoy the game, guys. Look for more videos, guys. If you're enjoying the content, you know what it is. Any support in the form of likes, subscribes, or comments is greatly appreciated, guys. And I do engage with y'all in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Happy raiding, guys. I'll catch you in the next video.